Hello, and welcome to the first in a series of podcasts covering Standard and Benchmark 3.2 for 10th grade biology. In this podcast, we'll be looking at chemical reactions, enzymes, and adenosine triphosphate, otherwise known as ATP. For Kalani High School, this is the Allaire Report, and I'm your host, Mr. Allaire. Chemical reactions are, of course, something that I keep near and dear to my heart, and that's because I love chemistry more than life itself. But for the uninitiated, chemical reactions are processes in which things change from one set of chemicals into another set of chemicals. Now, some reactions are slow, and some reactions are fast. Whatever begins or enters a reaction is referred to as a reactant. Whatever is created or is produced by a reaction is called a product. What's important to remember is that chemical reactions always involve the breaking of bonds and reactants and the formation of new bonds in products. Now, you might remember from your physical science classes last year that there are several different types of reactions. We focused on 5 last year, but we're going to simplify things for biology. The 3 basic types of reactions that we're going to be focusing are synthesis reactions, decomposition, and combustion reactions. Now, in a synthesis reaction, that's going to be a combination of 2 or more reactants to form a single product. In a decomposition reaction, you have pretty much the exact reverse of a synthesis reaction. You have the breaking down of one reactant to form 2 or more simpler products. In combustion, we have a reaction that involves free or atmospheric oxygen. That's it. Now, in these 2 examples that we have here, we first see an example of a synthesis reaction and then a decomposition reaction. Understanding chemical reactions is extremely important to understanding how living organisms work and function. Now, to help all of these chemical reactions, we have things that are called enzymes. Enzymes are catalysts, which are substances that speed up the rate of a chemical reaction. And by rate, we mean how fast the reaction is going. Now, cells and living organisms make their own catalysts called enzymes. All living organisms have them. You, me, dogs, cats, even plants have enzymes. These enzymes speed up the reactions that take place in cells. Here's an example. We take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide that's in our body gets mixed with water to form carbonic acid. Now, this would normally be a very slow reaction, but because of something called carbonic anhydrase, it speeds up this reaction by a factor of 10 million. As a result, the carbon dioxide gets removed from the blood very, very quickly. Now, if we just had enzymes going around speeding up reactions by factors of 10 million, things would be crazy. Our bodies wouldn't be able to function. But enzymes can be regulated. Things that affect enzymes include things like pH and temperature. Now, what regulates these enzymes? The cells do. Your cells contain proteins that can turn key enzymes on or off at critical moments in their life. Now, you might be thinking, well, what does that do? What's the point? Well, being able to switch things on or off is essential, first of all, to regulating chemical pathways, making materials that cells need, releasing energy, or also transferring information. These are key features that happen inside of a cell. And again, they regulate the enzymes to determine how quickly or how slowly these things are occurring. It's important to remember about enzymes that they are specific, and no 2 enzymes are going to work with the exact same chemical reaction. Now, along with changes in matter, chemical reactions also involve changes in energy. In a chemical reaction, energy is either absorbed or released whenever chemical bonds form or are broken. Reactions that release energy are called exothermic reactions, and these often occur spontaneously or all by themselves. On the other hand, you also have reactions that absorb energy. These are called endothermic reactions, and these will not occur without a source of energy. Now, in the last standard, we talked about how matter is cycled through the biosphere and how it is important for life. The carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus cycle, and the water cycle all involve the movement of matter and nutrients to help living things grow. Well, energy is also essential to life. Energy gives organisms the ability to do work, meaning they can grow, they can reproduce, they can feed, and do all of the other wonderful things that living things do. Where does this energy come from? Well, if you're an autotroph, like the blue-green algae pictured here on the screen, they use light from the sun to produce their own food. On the other hand, if you're a heterotroph, like the lion we see eating the zebra, they obtain energy from the food that they consume. Now, human beings and most animals are heterotrophs, while plants and algae are autotrophs. So let's take a couple of minutes to learn about where this energy is coming from. Energy comes in many different forms, such as light, heat, and electricity. But energy can also be stored in chemical compounds. The energy that powers our cells is called adenosine triphosphate, better known as ATP. ATP is a very complex molecule consisting of three main parts. The large green area on the left side of the screen is a nitrogen-containing compound called adenine. In the middle, the yellow pentagon is a 5-carbon sugar called ribose. On the end, the 3 blue circles represent 3 phosphate groups. That's where it gets its name, triphosphate, from. Again, this word is adenosine triphosphate, and this is the currency that our bodies use to power the cells and all of the functions that make our bodies sustain life. Once again, ATP is made up of 3 main parts. Adenine, which is a nitrogen-containing compound, ribose, which is a 5-carbon sugar, and 3 phosphate groups. Now, your bodies also have another substance within them that looks and sounds a lot like adenosine triphosphate, and that is adenosine diphosphate, or ADP. Now, ADP is very similar to ATP. You'll notice the structure at the bottom of the screen. Now, ADP has only 2 phosphate groups, whereas ATP has 3 phosphate groups. As a cell stores energy, it adds a phosphate group to ADP to form ATP. When ATP is created, it's like having a fully charged battery ready to power your cell. If you look in your textbook on page 203, there's actually a really great diagram comparing ATP to ADP using this battery reference. Now, once your cells have stored up all this energy, they're not going to hold on to it forever, they're going to use it. The energy stored in ATP is released when ATP is converted to ADP. The equation for this chemical reaction is a decomposition reaction. We have ATP producing ADP plus a phosphate group. Now, ATP only carries a small amount of energy. It actually carries just enough energy to power a variety of cell activities. These activities include things like active transport, specifically concerning sodium ions and potassium ions. It also controls the movement of things within the cell. Now, ATP only provides a very small amount of energy. It's really only good for a few seconds of activity. So, why is it so important? What's the whole point? Well, ATP is very efficient at transferring energy. However, ATP is not good for storing large amounts of energy over the long term. Instead of using ATP to store energy, cells in living organisms use glucose, which is a sugar found in carbohydrates. Glucose, surprisingly, stores more than 90 times the chemical energy of an ATP molecule. So when cells need to store energy, they're going to go with glucose. When cells need energy at that very moment, cells are going to regenerate ATP from ADP by using the energy stored in glucose. Well, this is the end of Part A. Stay tuned for Part B.